My name is Michael Cohen, and I am a co-author with Gary Anderson of the paper entitled Redesigning the Identities of Teachers and Leaders, a Framework for Studying New Professionalism and Educator Resistance. Gary Anderson is Professor of Educational Leadership at New York University, and I am an Assistant Professor of Educational Leadership and Policy Studies at the University of Northern Colorado. Gary Anderson and I have been interested in the way market-based reforms and a new sort of audit culture in the public schools, which some have called new public management, have not simply altered policy and curriculum, but have also altered the very core of what it means to be an educator, changing even the professional identities of teachers and school leaders, as Stephen Ball has shown in a number of publications. In this paper, we wanted to examine this change in educational professionalism, which has taken hold internationally, and the growing evidence of resistance to these changes. We raised the question, among others, what would be a productive framework for studying educator resistance and advocacy in this new context? Two brief examples of educators' experiences may help to set a context. Consider one of the ironies of new public management culture. It touts autonomy, entrepreneurialism, and innovation, particularly for principals, but these freedoms are often limited to budgeting, contracting with vendors, and hiring and retention. In these cases, the principal operates more as a consumer or a recruiter or fundraiser in an open market rather than as a leader of curriculum and instruction. Key decisions about curriculum and the purpose of schooling are decided from afar and within scripted programs and assessments. Or consider the wide and often mandated use of professional learning communities, what some call PLCs. While this looks like an opportunity for teachers to engage in authentic inquiry about student learning and their instruction, it is often decided in advance and from above that the goal will be to improve student outcomes on specific assessments or school outcomes in ranking systems. Two concepts inform our analysis in this paper. The first, new professionalism, comes from the sociology of the professions, particularly the work of Julia Evitz, and it entails a shift in the way public service professionals, for example in healthcare, social work, and education, are managed in this era. It is a shift from a relative discretion and governance from within the professions and their associations to a more organizational kind of professionalism, which entails control and regulation by managers and supervisors in work organizations that set specific objectives and performance targets. The second concept we use is Michel Foucault's notion of governmentality, which illustrates the way power circulates through discourses that become taken for granted as indisputable truths. Foucault's work helps us explore what a productive resistance to new professionalism might look like. Our paper is conceptual in nature, so writing it involved the study of a wide literature on new public management, new professionalism, and educator resistance. Using this literature, we build a diagram of various strategies of resistance used thus far. We then build upon this framework in the context of new professionalism and governmentality, showing what a new resistance might look like. We illustrate how it might move from the micro level of individuals' critical thinking, or what some call critical vigilance, to more collective acts among alliances of educators and their communities, acts that work against the grain of new public management. However, we also cite a number of serious countervailing forces working against the resistance efforts that have been attempted. Readers might ask, should we be pessimistic? Is there any cause for optimism? We illustrate and argue that there are some promising signs of productive resistance around us, but we want to be clear that we're not advocating a return to traditional professionalism in education or to bureaucracies that clearly did not serve communities of color and poverty well. We need a resistance that is generative of a new model of professionalism. As we illustrate within a table in the paper, this model might be termed an advocacy or even activist professional. It would connect educators and their associations in schools to their communities, especially low-income communities that have felt the effects of managerialist and market-based reforms most intensely. This new advocacy professional would entail an equity stance, working toward wider participation in the big decisions about teaching and learning, and for diverse, equitable, and culturally responsive schools. Ultimately, We argue that as more acts of resistance multiply, there is a window of opportunity to study resistance and to enact it in new ways, and to begin working toward reshaping the identities of education professionals.